Hello and welcome to Rock and Roll Ghost. I am your host. Today we debut again. Uh, been about a year since the last show. Today I present an interview I did recently with filmmaker Rod Lurie. Uh, Mr. Lurie was a graduate of West Point and served in the Army. He was a journalist, film critic, wrote a book in 1995 called Once Upon a Time on Hollywood, later to be used by Mr. Quentin Tarantino, but not the same subject matter, so there you have that. He has directed such films as Deterrence, a really amazing film that I have not seen since I first watched it, probably on VHS when it debuted in that format. It's a very fascinating movie about the President of the United States basically being stuck in a diner and waiting to see if he has to start World War III from basically like a laptop. It's way better than I'm making it sound, but Kevin Pollak is in it and he's awesome. His next film, The Contender, broke him out big. It was nominated for 2 Oscars. Joan Allen and Jeff Bridges both were nominated, and Gary Oldman's in it. Sam Elliott. Just a lot of really good. Christian Slater is really good in it too. A lot of really cool people. From there, he's directed Resurrecting the Champ with Samuel L. Jackson. Nothing But the Truth with Kate Beckinsale and Matt Dillon. Straw Dogs, remake of the Peckinpah film with James Marsden, Alexander Skarsgård, and Keith Bosworth. He did the TV show, the ABC show Commander in Chief with Gina Davis, and his newest film is a movie called The Outpost, which unfortunately due to COVID will not have much of a life in theaters, but it will be on video on demand coming July 3rd, just in time for 4th of July. And in The Outpost, that stars Orlando Bloom, Scott Eastwood, and Caleb Landry Jones. It details the Battle of Kamdesh that happened in 2009 and the men that served there. It's based on a book by Jake Tapper from CNN. And basically, the outpost in question, Outpost Keating, was stuck at the bottom in between mountains. And if once you see the film, you'll realize that only someone completely insane would have authorized an outpost to be in such a terrible location. They basically are, susceptible to enemy attack if the enemy chooses to attack. The film takes the first hour to basically, to Mr. Lurie's credit, does a wonderful job of introducing as many of the guys as possible. You get a real good sense of who each of these men are, or in some cases were. And then the actual battle happens, and it's an intense battle. Sometimes a lot of us don't think about what people in these situations actually do have to summon to get through something. And the film is absolutely amazing. I watched it, as you'll hear, on an iPad, which is not what I was hoping to do. We had screeners, and I wasn't able to figure out how to get it on my TV, so I watched it on my iPad with earbuds in, and I gotta tell you, the sound alone is great. and the battle is easy to follow. And there are some moments that really get to you. Orlando Bloom is not an actor I particularly was fond of. I never thought much of him in his big movies, but in The Outpost, he's far more mature, far more adult in this film than he had been in anything else. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think after this movie, I'd love to see what else he can do. Scott Eastwood continues to prove that he's just a real badass on screen. Sometimes his voice is so reminiscent of his father's that's a bit scary. But for me, the real standout is Caleb Landry Jones, who has been one of those guys that started out strong and has just gotten better. I remember first seeing him as Banshee in X-Men First Class, and he was really kind of interesting in that. And he's been in Get Out. He was an American Made with Tom Cruise. He was in why am I forgetting them? Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I think is the full title, with Sam Rockwell, who won an Oscar. And he's one of those guys that really is going to have a good career, I think, uh, especially going forward. I think The Outpost is really going to open some people's eyes about how good he is. And yeah, the film is just extraordinary. And if you consider the fact that Mr. Lurie, right before he was set to film in Bulgaria, his son, his son Hunter, died suddenly at a music festival he was attending, and despite the overwhelming grief that naturally has on someone, Mr. Lurie decided to go ahead and still make the film, and the film is actually dedicated to his son Hunter. So that's pretty extraordinary too, and I think his coming in and still doing the film really rallied. I think from what I understand, the cast and the crew. So that's a pretty touching and difficult to imagine thing to go through, to work through when you're doing something about these guys that lost their lives. You know, the amount of bravery by these young men that were about his son's age, and you really gotta really hand it to him for getting through it. And speaking of those young men, there were so many medals given out for valor, and including two Medal of Honor recipients for one battle, which apparently had not happened for 50 years. So the Battle of Kamdesh is a pretty stunning moment in military war history and American history, quite frankly. We could debate the merits or lack thereof of being in any war, but one thing you could never deny is the people that fight for us. You see something like this, and it really brings that back home again. And that's the great thing about entertainment, is that sometimes it can be a reminder, or it can be a teacher, or it gives us new perspective. I think entertainment in any form can be quite powerful and quite eye-opening to people. You know, I think a lot of things that happen in society, the judgments and biases melting away in a lot of cases, not that there aren't plenty of those still, come from entertainment. It's the acceptance through a medium that, we enjoy. If you're seeing these images of people being people, quite frankly, and living their lives and having their own struggles like you do, I think over time that helps. Now, obviously, in our current climate, we realize we have not completely eradicated that, but I think we've come a long way, and I think a lot of that has to do with entertainment. And Mr. Lurie's film, The Outpost, is a really good example of reminding us about these brave people that fight for our freedoms, even if we question the fighting to begin with. So I present to you the next half hour my talk with Mr. Lurie about The Outpost. Again, it's available on demand, video on demand, coming July 3rd, which is just around the corner from this post. And I hope you enjoy it and come back and check us out. We've got a lot more coming out. So stay tuned.
Do you remember what happened?
When?
During the battle?
Welcome to the dark side of the moon, gentlemen.
Aren't we supposed to be on top of the mountain to win this thing?
Our job is to separate the Taliban from the ordinary people. How do we do our jobs and stay safe? Respect keeps us safe.
I wouldn't trade this for anything. Look at us, band of brothers.
Keep me in your prayers, okay?
Trust me, babe, I quit.
I love you.
We're gonna win by getting their hearts and minds.
We want their hearts and minds, and they want our blood and guts.
Sorry, pal, but that's life at Camp Keating. Every time they take a pot shot at us, they're figuring us out. When the big one comes, they'll have us dialed in.
The Taliban's are here! Hundreds are coming!
It's the big one. Saddle up! Everybody fall back. Enemy in the wire.
I'll hang back and provide cover. We need to retake this camp.
We don't have any air support, the manpower.
Our men are trapped up there. Our ammo depot is 40 yards away. There's everything we need to stay in this fight. Let me do this, sir.
Let's show them some love with the 120s.
You all right, mate? Come on, put your arms around me. You're not gonna die, okay?
RPG! Red platoon!
We're taking this bitch back.
All right. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. I saw the movie last night.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I was only able to watch it on the iPad.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I
Why
will.
not your phone?
What's that?
Why not your phone?
Because I wanted to find the biggest screen I could actually get it on,
Okay,
and that
all
I
right.
almost had to resort to my phone because I opened up my iPad and it was not working. I was like I finally figured it out, but it took like 15 minutes to get it to connect. But I had to update Safari.
All right.
But I was trying to figure out a way to watch it on my TV, and I just could not figure out a way to do it. So,
All right.
but yeah, it was really well done.
Even though you only saw it on your iPad.
Well, you
And
know,
that's a testament.
I've said this. I say this about pretty much any film. A good film is a good film, no matter the medium. I watched Pulp Fiction on my phone about a year ago, after not seeing it for years, and there was something about seeing it, having it right there in my face, that renewed it for me somehow. when I'd seen that movie like 30 times, I mean, you know, after a while, you just kind of like, you're watching it, but you're not really watching it. You know, you're...
Well, you know, that's true, but obviously, and you're right, a good movie is a good movie. But, you know, it's interesting for me as a filmmaker, I designed it for...
Obviously.
And had I known that we would be releasing it during a pandemic and most people will see it at home, right. I might have shot it a little bit differently. It might have been more close-ups, for example, which is, you know, more conducive at home than it is on the big screen, in my opinion.
Right.
But, you know, like the sound work is better in a theater because I designed a bullet to come from the left and this bullet comes from the right and this explosion is here and that explosion is there and the airplane overhead and so on. And so, you know, I guarantee you that people like myself and on a bigger level, somebody like Chris Nolan are
right.
like really, their hearts are broken that it's not being seen in theaters.
Right.
That having been said, almost everyone who's seen this movie now has seen it at home, and it seems to be playing like extremely well. So
yeah,
so we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love going to the movies, and obviously, I would prefer. And if I can, I might, you know, if it's actually near me, I know it's getting limited release, I will do my best to see it in the theater. But
yeah,
I was listening to it with the earbuds in, and there was an immediacy about it.
Oh, right. Good.
So and absolutely terrifying at times.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, for your night shoots,
right,
you're miles ahead of most modern day night shoots.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I could see everything a lot clearer. I mean, you know, probably the zenith for most complained about would be Game of Thrones. I would think is a modern example where you literally can't seem to see anything.
Yeah, there was that one episode. From the final season that was mostly at night, and that was the big complaint about it. Well, we worked really hard. We have a few night scenes,
right?
And my DP is a guy named Lorenzo Senatori. He's like a master at that. You know, that it looks like night. You're at night. You feel the cold of the night, but you can see what you need to see.
Right.
And you know, and that obviously is important. We want audiences to know what's going on.
Right.
Sure.
That's got to be incredibly time consuming in a lot of ways, because especially with doing the long shots that you tended to do with the film, to get something to look the way you intended to look, and that will be clear as well.
Yeah. So like when you shoot at night, you know, it's a little bit of a mystery how it's all going to turn out.
Right.
But like I said, Lorenzo is so experienced that he was able to get us there. But you made a point, excuse me, which is that we had these very long shots in the film, and that was obviously intended. And most of the scenes are done in one long shot, including the battle scenes, which is very difficult. And the point there was really to create this sense of immersion, you know, in each of the scenes. Very important to a battle movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. How did you come to first hear about this battle? Was it from the battle itself or Jake Tapper's book?
Well, no, the battle is, you know, infamous among, and I was in the military.
Yeah.
And I'll always be a military guy. And so within our community, the battle was infamous. It's the most heroic battle, the bloodiest battle of the Afghanistan war. It's a battle where 2 men received the Medal of Honor, Brett.
Right.
I mean, you know, that's really fucking significant.
Yeah.
And so I had known about it. The original director of this movie was Sam Raimi.
Okay.
And you know, one of the people who worked for him had found the book and had found that a screenplay had been written from the book, the Jake Tapper book, and the screenplay was written by these guys, Paul Tamasi and Eric Johnson, who had won the Academy Award for The Fighter. And for some reason, Sam decided to drop out. And then he was going to produce it. He asked me to direct it. I wasn't available at the time, but a long story short is he's not a producer anymore.
Right.
Paul Merriman, the guy who was with him, is. And so, you know, they came to me at one point and said it should be a mini series.
Right.
And I felt that that wouldn't be well served. But I wanted to, I really wanted to make this war film as a military man myself. You know, I really, really wanted to make it. I'd never served in combat, and there's a little bit of guilt about that. And I figured that if I couldn't serve alongside my brothers, I'd do what I could to honor them. And that's why I made this film.
Okay. Was there any hesitation about making an Iraq, Afghanistan war film in light of the fact that they haven't exactly been... It's not like the Vietnam War had, you know, in the 80s, had that resurgence with Platoon and Full Metal Jacket and everything. Maybe because we're not out of it yet, we haven't been able to remove ourselves from it to see it from a different perspective yet.
Well, this is, you know, so now let's just talk, you and I as film historians and cineasts. So you bring up something really interesting, which is in World War II, they made movies during the war about the war and right after the war. And that was no problem because that was a popular war. In other words, popularly supported war.
Right.
And the Vietnam War, there were a couple of films made during the Vietnam War that were the war, like The Green Beret, John Wayne.
Right.
But it wasn't until well after the war, I would say probably starting in earnest with The Deer Hunter and Coming Home, that you could make films about the war. But you know, these movies never glorified Vietnam at all, right? And so, and Platoon to me was one of the most emotional experiences I ever had as a film goer, seeing Platoon.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Full Metal Jacket, a Stanley Kubrick film, and there were several really strong Vietnam War films. And now you come to Iraq and Afghanistan, and there have been some very successful films that have emerged from these wars. There's American Sniper, for example.
Right, and The Hurt Locker.
Oh, Hurt Locker. There's Lone Survivor. Generally speaking, I would say that it's dangerous to take up this topic because so many people are opposed to this war and our presence there that they don't want to see a movie about it. It's not good for the right. It's not good for the left. So, but these movies that have been successful, they tend to be about the elite units, about the Navy SEALs, about the Rangers, about the special forces. And my movie, The Outpost, is about regular dudes.
Right.
Just guys in the infantry, guys who, everyone wants to do their time, and most of them, some will stay in the military, but many want to just go and raise a family or get a job or do this or do that with their lives. And, we don't make movies about those guys.
Right.
This movie we made, and about these guys and how they overcame these ridiculous odds. It's like Thermopylae. It's like Zulu, and they fucking pulled it off, man. And that's really something to admire.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, it's you guys leap into it right away. The idea of where that outpost sat was
the outpost sat at the bottom of the Hindu
was completely insane.
It's insane. Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to look at it. I mean, the army had their reasons, I guess, but the reasons were not good enough to put men into this kind of jeopardy. Right. And by the way, before this unit, which is Bravo Troop 361 CAF, got there, all the other units had to deal with this shit, with bullets coming streaming down at them on an almost daily basis.
Right. But
the big attack, what they called the big one, didn't come until October 3rd, 2009. That's what the movie's about.
Right. And the way your film seems to make it appear is that all the little skirmishes that happen before it are almost like a test.
Yeah.
To
see bad guys.
To basically see how they respond and what they would do.
Well, so the enemy, the Taliban, were building up to understanding exactly how we were going to respond, and they got it exactly right.
Yeah,
they knew what to attack first, what to bring down first, in order to make us inefficient. That was we're going to attack the mortar pit first, because the mortar pit protects the rest of the unit. And they also waited until they got better equipped before they attacked us.
Right.
Now's a good time to say that, we're one of those rare movies where we don't really exaggerate and we don't add things that didn't happen. In fact, we took away so much of what actually happened on that day.
Right.
We even took away a whole unit. There was another mortar unit on top of the mountain,
Right.
that was meant to overlook. It was called Frichi. That was meant to overlook combat outpost Keating and protect it. And they got involved in their own skirmish on that day. And I chose not to have it so as to make the film a little bit less complicated for the
You're already
viewer.
following a bunch of characters around in a high pressure situation, and
Right.
keeping track of one base, and was hard
Yeah,
enough.
I just felt, the screenplay, the screenplay that we ended up shooting was not the screenplay that I got, and that was necessitated by many things, and our writers had to adjust constantly. And one of the things is what you're talking about is that we already were following so many characters, and I really felt it was important to properly honor the 8 men who fell in this battle, to tell each of their individual stories.
Mm-hmm.
That to add on this other layer of this whole other unit, and by the way, a whole portion of the day that they went through is not included in this movie. Maybe one day I'll make a movie that is like the parallel universe to this film, and that parallel universe was real. And
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. What was? I hesitate to ask it this way because I think I can guess what the hardest part was about making the film was, but in general, nuts and bolts, what was the hardest part of making the film?
Well, that's a complicated answer, and if you're talking about from the physical making of the film, it's really shooting a battle with the little amount of money that we had and the little amount of time that we had, and it's very daunting because I'm going to guess that probably our entire battle and our entire movie had less money and less time than Spielberg had for just the sequence on Normandy Beach in Saving Private Ryan. And, our budget is a fraction of almost every war film than you can imagine. And so we had to figure out a way to do that right. It certainly wasn't easy. And, but the other difficult thing was, there's a lot of pressure on us because there are soldiers that survived that battle, and they're going to expect us to get it right. And then are the families of the fallen, and we want to show them the proper respect, and that's not an easy thing to do because these guys, they weren't angels,
right?
They weren't sweethearts, all of them. I have to explain to the families. Josh cursed once in a while. I get it, but I didn't know what they would object to, what they would be upset about, if they'd be upset, how we showed their deaths. So, this was, it was, so from a physical point of view and from an emotional point of view, this was a, very difficult movie to make.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yo, completely. No. I will say I was struck by what I've read is the ability to find in Bulgaria a location that almost matched what the actual guys were in.
Well, between you and I, we didn't find that location because we shot the film in this massive quarry.
Okay.
Elena Melamed, who was our line producer, she found this quarry, and it was like a perfect place to shoot on a technical level,
right?
Because we never had to leave it, even where we put our base camp. But it was not surrounded by mountains, and the mountains that you see are one of the few things we have to do with CGI.
Okay.
The film is, the film is as practical as a movie can be, and and so many of the explosions are real and they're actually happening there, and the bullets flying, most of them are real. But that was some of the movie magic came in creating the environment. We had actually scouted in Morocco.
Okay.
And that was, from a physical landscape point of view, much more real to what was there. But Morocco presented so many challenges to us that I think the movie might have ended up being impossible to make on a bureaucratic level at the very least.
With regards to the government?
Well, we couldn't get weapons into Morocco, and like in Morocco, as it was explained to us, when you're shooting blanks, which we shot a lot of blanks, right? However many blanks you fire, you have to find all those shells.
Okay.
You have to have a perfect accounting, and and the hassle of even getting those in, it's so immense,
right?
That we didn't think it was possible. It might have been easier for us to get extras to play the Taliban in Morocco, but getting extras to play the American soldiers would be much more difficult.
Okay.
Right. So, and also in Bulgaria, that's where the studio is, Millennium. That's where they exist, and they were able to. They're able to provide us with all their equipment, and much easier. It was just easier to shoot in Bulgaria in the end.
Gotcha. What besides the connection of your military background, what was the reason why you decided to actually feel that you needed to tell this story?
Well,
because you mentioned Sam was
it is. Well, I'm pausing only because it really is the military connection.
Yeah.
And look, our movie is very apolitical. There's no red state, blue state with this movie whatsoever, and that's what we discovered in our testing of it. And I'm a very, very political guy. I mean, I definitely have a political point of view.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see an inch of it in this movie. But one of the things I really want to accomplish, because I'm not saying that I love the military industrial complex. I certainly don't, and I'm not saying that I have full respect for the decision making of military leadership. But I love the American soldier. Right? Love the American soldier, and what he or she has come to stand for. I think it's the best. The best that we have in this country, especially in the volunteer army.
Correct.
And so I really wanted to show what the American soldier is capable of. And as I said, the American grunt is capable of. These are not superstars. They're not the SEALs. They're not the Rangers. They're not the kind of guys that you make movies about. And I thought, and that was quite important to me.
Okay. All right. How do you? This is kind of a hard to answer question, I would imagine. But how do you expect the film to be received in the current climate?
Well, if by current climate you mean how is it going to be received?
Politically.
Politically, I think it'll be received extremely well.
Yeah.
We look. This is the kind of thing that we test. And that we know going in. When we tested the film, exactly 0% of the audience thought it had a political point of view. So I think that in today's climate, where we're all desperate to feel good to be an American, right? We don't all feel good about being American now, and that's on both sides, and that's because of how divided and polarized we are. What this film is it's a fucking unifier. Okay. I believe that is what I truly believe. Look, I made a film at the turn of 2011. It came out called Straw Dogs, which was highly political and definitely had a blue state, red state point of view, and that did not work out for me. Right? So if I'm making a piece of entertainment, that's what I want it to be. And yes, this movie does say something, but it says something only good.
Okay.
And it's, in my opinion, and although we can be critical of the military decision to put the outpost there, we cannot be. I find it very hard to be critical of the individual soldier.
No, and I have military in my background. My grandfather was in the tank division in World War II, member of the Hellcat division.
Oh, he was in the armor. Okay, good.
Yeah, and my uncle was in Vietnam. So I've always had, especially because of my grandfather, I've had growing up in a different age than my mother did. My mother grew up in the 60s, so she had not that she has any disrespect for the military, but she grew up in a separate time than I did. So
yeah,
we have different perspectives. But, I grew to realize that, you cannot blame, except in extreme circumstances where they do things that are outside of the realm of normalcy. You cannot blame the soldiers for the fighting itself.
There are individual soldiers who have behaved badly, and they're put on trial, and they're kicked out of the army. But in principle, when you watch The Outpost,
right,
I challenge you not to be really proud to be an American. Look, we're releasing on July 4th weekend.
Right.
Spend July the 4th with a soldier. That's my attitude about it. And what can I say? I'm a military guy. I'm really proud of this movie, and really proud of what we portrayed in it.
Yeah. Okay. One last question, because I know it's almost time. But are you working towards setting up your next project at all?
Well, that's a really good question. Yes, I most certainly am. But God knows what or when that's going to be.
Gotcha.
I've made two very big deals. One of them is a big television project, and the other is a big movie project. And I've also written a script that I would like to make. But there's just no telling when all of this is going to be. We're going to be allowed to do any of this.
Right.
We keep saying we're going to allow production. We're going to open up this. We're going to open up that. I'm hearing about Tyler Perry's. What he's doing down in Georgia, which sounds fantastic, and bless him for trying to put this all together and to get us kickstarted. But this is a little bit like looking at the NFL coming up. Like, can they really do this?
Right.
Are they really going to be able to pull this off? Does it make any sense? I see so many obstacles, which breaks my heart because I'm a big fantasy player and I live for the NFL.
Okay.
And,
well, they haven't even. I mean, they figured out basketball.
Maybe we'll see if
if it actually happens. They've at least nobody's put together any similar idea for baseball, which is by this point is almost half over.
Something, but there's so much shit going down in Florida right now. And that's where they want to play the basketball.
Right.
So we'll see. I'm hoping. I'm a sports fan. I watch sports. I bet on sports. The NFL and college football so meaningful to me. It'll be so depressing if we don't have that. But I look at the film production the same way. Will it all be able to come together?
Well, and it's going to come to a point where we're going to run out of new things. For those of us that I normally spend a lot of time at home, so this pandemic didn't really derail much of my life, anyways. Unfortunately, fortunately for that, not that I didn't go stir crazy, but when you have things to keep your attention, but the problem is there's a finite, amount of things to keep your attention now. If we don't,
one thing you can do is watch The Outpost in July 4th weekend.
It's an excellent final plug. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I will catch you around.
Right, Brett, and I really admire the work you do. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. You take care.
Cheers, boss.
All right. Take care. Bye.